Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World Daily with me, John Jordan. So I warn you, this is going to be a bit of a rant, but this is a kind of an editorial that's just been published by GamesIndustry.biz. So a bit of context: GamesIndustry.biz is one of the big kind of what we call B2B, business to business websites about the games industry. It's been running for well over 10 years now. And I've been particularly interested in GamesIndustry.biz because for a lot of those 10 years I've been involved with various websites, mainly PocketGamer.biz, which is sort of a direct comparison. I mean, Pocket Gamer is just about mobile games, and Games Industry covers everything. But I've always been kind of, I guess, overly sensitive about what they're kind of covering. So that's kind of interesting from that point of view. So I think they're obviously a professional team. But I have some differences of opinion about what they cover, and quite obviously I think PocketGamer.biz is by far the superior website. There we go. But what's really interesting here, that's kind of by the by, that's just giving you my backstory about why I don't like them. Not on a personal basis, but on a commercial basis, professional basis. So they've written this editorial, which I just think is preposterous, and as well as being misinformed and I mean, I would use the term stupid. I mean, obviously they're not stupid people. So the fact they're misinformed is kind of where they've kind of gone wrong, in my opinion. But I think it is actually quite dangerous for the games industry. Although I would also say that I find this attitude really reflected in the games industry a lot. I mean, certainly when I got into blockchain 3 years ago, it was pretty. Most people in the games industry had this view. Blockchain was kind of stupid. Wasn't going to work for many reasons. And still quite a lot of people believe that. I mean, still people I come into contact with are almost morally against blockchain for gaming. A lot more people now are obviously kind of curious. What's it about? What why am I so passionate about it? So it is changing. But I would say this attitude is not uncommon. So anyway, let's just go through it. I'm not going to kind of read it all out because there's kind of like analogies about baseball or something for some reason. Anyway. So they talk about, there's lots of people in gaming promise new things all the time, and it failed to deliver. Obviously, we've had kind of VR and cloud gaming and all this sort of stuff, which is interesting, but doesn't quite kind of come about. And they're saying our personal assessment on whether the idea is brilliant or doomed, that doesn't really matter. It's whether we think it's significant or whether our readership cares about it. Now, this doesn't seem to be the case for blockchain. So there are some exceptions. So we've seen a spike in NFTs recently. Actually, the spike in NFTs definitely has happened. Not really anything to do with gaming. The spike in NFTs has been about owning digital assets, kind of collectibles or just kind of artwork. There's been a lot of artwork, obviously tweets now, that sort of thing. So there's not really been any there has been under the surface a lot of gaming NFT stuff going on, but that's not been any of the headlines. The Bleeple art NFT that sold for $69 million wasn't a game NFT. So they obviously point out at the moment game publishers can create in-game markets. So although they do point out here, even if publishers don't allow in-game trading, people just sell their accounts. And they also point out, interestingly, the notion of players having actual ownership is illusionary. So that they do understand that at the moment, people who are playing games, who are spending maybe tens, hundreds, thousands of dollars in games, don't own their stuff. They basically, it's on a centralized server, and they can sell it, but it's illegal. And they say there's been kind of these people have tried to fix this in the past. One kind, certificates of authenticity, vaguely relating to things. So yes, but now they understand this sort of a little bit, thanks to blockchain. So they're almost saying, thanks to blockchain technology, the purchaser will have the comfort of knowing the seller will have to take an entire new photo. So they've almost got to the point of understanding NFTs. But they haven't. They've kind of fallen into this kind of fallacy of like, well, you just create another photo of it. So they haven't really understood the fact that things can run on a decentralized network, but you can have kind of trustless systems. And because the developer of the game has created these things, they would have some sort of extra trusted status. Okay, so they've kind of started pointing out that they're overlooking most of these pitches anyway, because kind of NFTs are rubbish and people can just take new screenshots. And then they fall down the rabbit hole of environmental impact. So Now, lots of people seem to fall down this thing at the moment, and that's because obviously environmental stuff is very hot, is very close to people's attention. But I guess, you know, if you're really into blockchain, you just don't have the nuance of what's going on here. So, of course, it takes electricity to mine cryptocurrencies and electricity to validate transactions. Best guesses are Bitcoin uses as much electricity as Argentina. May or may not be true. Obviously, no NFTs run on Bitcoin. So no games, no NFTs run on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is using as much electricity as Argentina or whatever it is. And it's nothing to do with NFTs or gaming. Bitcoin's just going to do that for as long as Bitcoin's around. So the first thing you have to understand is Bitcoin's nothing to do with NFTs. Ethereum, spelt wrong. Hey ho, that happens. So Ethereum, I've not really seen any research to say how much electricity Ethereum takes. I mean, it could be the same, but Ethereum, they do point out here, is moving to a different process, and every other blockchain apart from Ethereum and Bitcoin doesn't use a vast amount of electricity. So if you want to go into detail, obviously it's proof of work, consensus mechanic versus various proof of stake mechanics, where proof of work you're doing big calculations to work out who's mining. And to secure the chain. In proof of stake, you're just staking your value, your tokens. They just work in totally different ways. So the vast majority of blockchains, i.e. all the blockchains in the world, n-2, don't use a lot of electricity. So we've crossed that one out. So this is all rubbish. Staggering price to pay for the ability. Well, no, it's not, because we're not really doing it. So NFT have rolled out their own NFT. The NBA have rolled up NBA Top Shot. Well, it's not the NBA; it's a license. But they're basically talking about people using NFTs. But if they are to be legitimised, it cannot be in their current forms, which have numerous drawbacks and at best promise for the people involved to address these drawbacks some point down the road. Ethereum estimates it will have moved away from the energy proof of work by the end of 2022. It might be quicker than that. I mean, that's fair enough. If you're really worried about Ethereum's carbon footprint, then yeah, you probably wouldn't buy NFTs. But equally, we all know people play. They actually talk about this later on. Computer games and data centers take a vast amount of electricity as well. So there is it would be a wider issue that I would deal with, which is, you know, are we going to stop all progress in the world because it takes some energy, or are we going to use energy for the things we think are super important? You know, that would be the argument I make. And it's interesting because things like Bitcoin and Ethereum at the moment do use a lot of electricity, that actually they are quite strong drivers to have more efficient, cheaper electricity. So actually you could argue, and people do argue, that Ethereum and Bitcoin are actually key drivers for moving away from fossil fuels, because that solar electricity or geothermal or whatever it is, hydroelectric stuff, is much cheaper than fossil fuels, and obviously it's kind of greener energy. So actually you could argue cryptocurrencies are actually driving the solution, which is less climate change. Hey ho, that's a bit nuanced for them. So back to Argentina, blah blah blah. Okay, and we're going to throw in some fossil fuel and tobacco companies for some reason. Gaming consumes plenty of electricity, and they have GI has particular concerns about that. Although I haven't seen any editorial saying they're not going to cover cloud gaming anytime soon, because ultimately these games, of course, offer entertainment, stress release, social connections, creative, potentially even education and edification, whatever edification is. And blockchain is just get rich quick fantasies. It's gambling, in fact. So you can kind of see, you know, it's very simple how this kind of argument has been laid out. Basically, you know, it's hard to tell if it's chicken or egg, really, whether they're worried about the electricity and they think NFTs are gambling, and that means that blockchain and NFT is bad, or NFTs and blockchains are bad. So we'll go and find some reasons to kind of point out they're bad, because clearly NFTs are nothing to do with gambling. Obviously, there is particular issues around gambling at the moment. You can say loot boxes are gambling. Haven't seen GI not talking about games that use loot boxes recently. They go whole about we don't cover gambling. In fact, they haven't actually pointed out at any stage here why they think NFTs are gambling. Obviously the price of NFTs can go up and can go down. But would you say that the obviously GI wouldn't cover the price of Pokemon cards, I guess, but the price of Pokemon cards goes up and down. You know, any collectible thing, if you want to collect Picassos, the price of those goes up or down. it's just like a nonsensical argument. So they've basically now, after the electricity fandango, they've actually said we don't cover gambling, so we're not going to cover blockchain because it's gambling and it's bad for the environment. Which is, it's fine. They can do what they like on their website, but it is staggering when because immediately the amount of blockchain game companies that are out there. The Dapper Labs, which they kind of failed to mention, doing NBA Top Shop, is a proper company funded by lots of VC companies. There's Mythical Games, there's Ubisoft, there's Animoca Brands, there's hundreds of other kind of small ones that most people kind of won't have heard of. But we've had already hundreds of millions of dollars, $200 million already this year that's gone to blockchain games companies from VCs because they are building something that's different and new, and in fact, I would argue is a much better form of gaming because the people who are playing the games, who are actually paying into the games, are actually owning something in the game. That thing could be worth more money, might not be worth more money, but they have the opportunity to sell that, to trade that. Maybe no one will buy it. Obviously, pricing is a way. If you try and sell something and the price is too high, then you have to drop the price. But maybe you're in a blockchain game where no one will buy kind of what you own. But the fact is, you still own it. And potentially you could maybe take that to another game, and potentially take it to a sequel. But more important, people like owning their stuff now, and that's really for me what blockchain boils down to. There are, I think, more interesting stuff and more interesting things for GI to think about, which is how the business model changes. At the moment, we have, say, $200 billion of revenue spent in games, and that money goes from consumers, you and me, who are playing games, buying games. That goes straight to the developers. And then developers obviously kind of pay their staff and take the rest as profit. In a blockchain game scenario, what's happening is the developers may create some content, and people may buy that content, those assets to play the game. But then when those assets are then traded onwards, then obviously the majority of the money flows between the players. So if I have a character in a game and I sell it and you buy it, I get the money that you're paying to buy that new character, but the developer also gets a share. So normally a developer will get like 5%. So if I sell my character for $100, I get $95 back, and you get the character, and the company, the developer, gets $5 back. So it's a really actually radical change of how the industry works, how the game industry is going to change, because now success in the games industry is not about having a massive scale, having as many players as possible, having really high prices in the game, having loot boxes. Although blockchain games can have loot boxes, I'm not against loot boxes per se. But now, for the game to be successful in the long term, you have to build a marketplace system where players can sell, players can get things in the game. They can maybe level them up. There's maybe randomness in there. There's rarity, and they can find new things. They can put them for sale. Other people who want them can buy them. So you have trading going on between players. That's a kind of an interesting economy we haven't really seen very much of up to this point in the game space, because you can't do it without blockchain. But the developer now is taking a small percentage of that revenue in the long term. So I think that's going to make games actually more accessible. It's going to make games more accessible to smaller developers. They're going to be more profitable in the long term. I think that makes it very interesting for investors. And more importantly, the users are going to be part of that experience. So if a game starts to do well and more people come in to play the game, more people are going to be starting to buy those assets in the marketplace. The people who've been playing early on, they're going to see the price of those things rise. It's not gambling. As people don't understand what gambling actually means. I think half the time, that's how economies work. People create value by doing things with assets. And in this case, people are playing the game and they're saying this game's great. They're on social media saying that, and then that attracts more people into the game. And even if they're not saying that on social media, by playing the game, they're making the game, they're driving the game forward. They're showing the developer, you should invest more in this game because people are playing it and enjoying it. We can see that from the data. And then that draws more people in. Maybe the developer spends more on marketing. It's actually what we call a player-led economy, which is the exact opposite of gambling. Because with gambling, basically you pay, the bookie sets up a bet and you pay. You either win or you lose. So there's no transactional thing going on there in the long term. It's just like a decision, kind of yes or no. And blockchain is totally different because it actually aligns what the players want in a game. It also aligns that financial value, but it aligns the kind of the entertainment they get and the financial value alongside the financial value of the developer. So unlike free-to-play games, which I personally like, but I know lots of people don't like because they say, well, people are just paying to win. This time, the developer and the player want the same thing. They want a good game, and the players will stop playing and stop paying if they don't think the game's going in the right direction. But if it is, the economy is circular. So the economy goes between the players mainly. The majority of the transaction, the majority of the money in the game passes between players, and a proportion of that comes back to the developer, and that's much more equitable. You can also go down the route of the players who own things can have a voting. You can have voting systems. You have these things called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, where people can create what we call, people can create proposals. I want this game to do this. Can the next level do this? Can we have a new character called this? And then people can vote on it. And you have a much more interesting kind of organization that runs the games. It's not the developer, the centralized organization saying this is how it's going to go. There's much more alignment of incentives. And obviously that won't always work out. Not every blockchain game is going to be a success. I would say, even the majority of them will probably still be failures. I would say that I think they're going to be more interesting failures than we currently have. I think it's going to be very new types of games are going to emerge from this, which I find exciting. But in general, I just kind of think it is a better solution than we have now, and it is ridiculous that one of the kind of big professional games journalism organizations is basically can't understand that this isn't about climate change and isn't about gambling. Now, obviously, I'm passionate about blockchain games, and if you haven't got someone in your team who's not passionate about blockchain games, doesn't understand it, clearly, that's where you take the decision that GI has done. They don't have anyone who understands blockchain, clearly. And it is funny that they say if a major player like Ubisoft embraces it, then we'll write about that. So it's okay. So despite the fact it's gambling and it's energy intensive, if Ubisoft are doing it, we'll cover that. I mean, that's just, I can't even understand how illogical that decision is. So there we go. I like this one. If blockchain really does reshape the industry, obviously we would have no choice but to cover it. It's almost like, can you have less enthusiasm for blockchain? Even if it's massively successful, we're going to have to cover it, aren't we? I don't like to, I mean, it's just staggering. I just can't, I mean, all I can say is this is, well, it's going to be egg on someone's face. It's going to be egg on GI's face, or it's going to be egg on my face, because and the whole game and the whole blockchain games industry, because I passionately believe this is going to be pretty big, and we're going to look back on this, and I don't take this, I think they just don't understand what's going on. But it's interesting that they seem to think they understand it enough to write something that could be quite embarrassing for them in the next year or so. Anyhow, we will see. It's a bit of a rant, wasn't it? I do like to rant sometimes, and I was just staggered to see this. So there we go. Brendan, if you want to have a debate with me any time, we can do that. But thanks for watching the video. If you made it to the end, well done. Please subscribe to the channel, and see you again soon.